Hello! Today I will be reading The Legend of the Lady Slipper by Kathy Jo Worgen, illustrated by Gisselberg van Frankenhuizen. Long ago, in a lush forest of green and gold, there was a small village. In the center of the village was one large fire with heavy kettles hanging above it, and nearby were several houses made of wood and bark. It was a village of peace, and its people lived beautiful and simple way of life. Every night, the children of the village would gather around the fire and warm their faces by the light of the dancing flames. They would listen to their elders tell magical stories about Inkman and the beaver, the woobos and rabbit, and the macaw, the bear. As the storytellers spoke, they waved their hands, weaving visions and dreams into tales. At the circles, there was one of the young maiden who always listened more carefully than the rest. Her name was Running Flower, and she was as swift as an ancient white deer and more beautiful than the full night sun. Running Flower lived with her father, Chief Spinning Feather, and her mother, Woman of Morning Light. Running Flower admired her mother greatly because she taught her to believe that there is a brilliant spring that always follows the hardest of winters. She taught her to honor the frozen ground because beneath the heavy snow, Mother Earth was preparing to grow and live once more, and this made Running Flower smile. Running Flower had great respect for her father because he was tall and straight and strong. Sometimes Chief Spinning Feather wore a wide leather band around his head with two-edged feathers dangling from it. She linked how they would spin in the wind when she walked through the forest and how they would bounce between her face when he joined the round dance of the night. Sometimes his face wore a small, steady smile that made her feel very proud. Running Flower had deep respect for her land and the spirit of the people. She knew she belonged to the woodland, and in the same way, they belonged to her. And this, too, made her smile. Running Flower shared this love with the forest with everyone in the village. In spring, during the time of the flower moon, she would gather forget-me-nots and daisies and place them neatly into the braids of the young girls. In summer, when it was the raspberry moon, she would guide the oldest women deep into the forest and help them pick the sweet red raspberries to remind them of the youth. And during the moon of the falling leaves, Running Flower would gather acorns and teach the youngest boys how to spin them like little brown tops. And this, too, made her smile. In the deepest part of the winter, when only frozen spirits could journey through the land with ease, everyone in the village wore snowshoes to travel through the woods, but not for Running Flower. She would dash through the forest wearing nothing on her feet but moccasins. Many times, when only the pale winter moon stood watch, Running Flower would fly into the paths of the sunlit woods. She would be so swift and light-footed that starlight seemed to fall at her heels, and this made her smile, the most beautiful smile. One winter, during the time of the frozen spirit moon, the sky brought forth more snow than the people had ever seen. The wind was brittle and clear, and the glaze of crystals covered the village. Running Flower noticed that the elders of the village were growing sick. They were coughing and moaning. They were tired and sore. The sickness grew worse every day, and soon there were no storytellers sitting by the fire at night. During the day, no young braves went to hunt, and there were no kettles hanging over the fire. The smallest children stayed in the lodges, where their mothers kept them warm beneath the robes of their skin. Even the medicine man was too ill to help. At night, a few young men beat the drum in a loud, impatient way, warning others of their pain. One evening, Running Flower went to her father. As she stepped into the lodge, she noticed that her mother lay ill by the fire. Her face was warm and moist. Running Flower was very worried, and then she saw that even her father, the great spinning chief Feather, was strong no more. Her eagle feathers were laying on the ground, and his eyes looked old and sad. Running Flower went out of the lodge and flat on her hands to her lips, then lifted them generously to the sky. All at once she knew that she must do. She knew that she had to race on the village on the other side of the forest and find medicine for her people. In the quiet of the night, she donned with her robe and wrapped it tightly around her body. She took her father's eagle feathers from the floor and held them tight in her hand and fled into the forest. Running Flower ran swift like a deer, pressing lightly upon the crust of the moon-showered snow. In the distance she heard the drums of her village pounding through the air. As the wind rhythm raced through her body, she ran along the frozen trails, following the light of the polar star. Running Flower flew with such great speed that her heart began to pulse like a mad rushing river. She made her way through the thickest of areas of the forest, and as the cold wind raced through her, and as she ran, frozen pine needles poked at her back, face, and ice-landed branches lashed at her back. But all in the way, she held her father's feathers tightly in her hand, and they made her strong, and this made her smile, a very brave smile. As she ran upon the trail, and soft morning light cast the shadows of blue and gray around her, and her body grew feverish. Her face became hot and damp as she struggled against the snow. Running Flower grew also tired, and too sore to notice that the wind was cold. She no longer felt the sting of the pine needles and the ice upon her feet. Many times she stumbled, and many times she stopped to rest beneath the shelter of the cedar and spruce trees. But Running Flower still smiled. As she neared her village, she heard the beat of the drums once again. The sound made her heart pound and her body brave and strong even more. But the brave little girl kept running. She ran until her mind felt as if it was filled with clouds. She ran until her body felt heavy and slow. She ran until she could not run any more. Running Flower let out a terrible wail and fell to the ground. Two young braves in the village heard her cries and stepped into the forest to find her. When they did, they saw Running Flower laying in the snow, medicine pouch in one hand, and the fathers of the great chief in the other. The braves carried her cold, limp body into the village and laid her on the bed of moss. The drums stopped beating, and the air grew quiet. Everyone came out to see Running Flower as she lay by the fire, and her eyes closed and her mouth still and straight. The great chief Spinning Feather walked wearily up to his daughter. He took the medicine pouch from her hand and carefully past it to the people, and he lovingly stroked her long black hair and looked upon the sky. Mother of Morning Light pressed her cheek on Running Flower's heart and kissed the frozen tears from her face. And then, as the chief looked into her form, he noticed that the two eagle feathers still clutched in her hand. With tears in his eyes, he whispered to her so that she was very brave and that springtime would be coming soon. But Running Flower did not smile. In desperation to save her, the women of the village began to take great pieces of fur and wrap Running Flower's frozen feet. They sewed brilliant pink beads and quills upon them to honor their young hero and their friend whom they loved so much. As the women were busy stitching and sewing, Running Flower took one long last breath, and the feathers dropped quietly from her hand. Chief Spinning Feather began to weep openly, and the women of the Morning Light collapsed on the ground. The women, the braves, and the children began to cry. The sound of their sorrow was filling the harsh winter air, when a great flash of light, the sun burst forth into the glorious show of light. It was so large and warm, it melted months of the snow. New buds appeared, and the flowers and the bees and the birds began to sing. As everyone watched, the beautiful wrappings upon the feet of the running flower turned into slippers made of magnificent blossoms, and the forest path beneath the running flower ran upon its thick carpet of the most marvelous pink and white flowers anyone had ever seen. Everyone watched in amazement as these flowers blossomed behind the soul of the running flower, as if she made her way through the forest one last time. And this made everyone smile. Today, her footsteps remain in the green and gold forests of the north, far beneath the light of the polar star. Each lady's slipper is a gentle reminder of the beauty and courage that lives in each of us, and of the many different ways that we live in the hearts of those who we love. And somewhere in that forest, running flower will smile forever. The Legend of the Lady Slipper.